Ethan Chapin, Zaina Kernodle, Maddie Mogan, and Kaylee Gonzalez were beloved members of the community. Moscow police still do not have a suspect.
The scene wasn't chaos, the neighborhood, but it was very, very somber.
They brought in an army of experts and FBI support to comb through new tips about the white Hyundai Elantra seen in the immediate area in the early morning hours of November 13th.
Y'all, go ahead and buckle your sofa seatbelts up because this case is heartbreaking. It's horrifying. It's what nightmares are made out of, and sadly, it is real life. Let's go ahead and jump into what is happening in Idaho. Hello, Sofa Squad, and welcome back to the damn sofa. That is the damn sofa behind me. And again, Mr. Roscoe, our mascot, is in front of me in his little kitty bed. Some of you might not have even met Mr. Roscoe at this point. I apologize, but his stand-in is back there. His little comfort bear, Mr. Roscoe, and his little pillow, Mr. Roscoe, that a Sofa Squad member sent us. So today, you saw the thing, you're here, thank you for joining. We are going to be talking about the Idaho case. Whew. So if you follow me, you know I've been moving. I was knee deep in the Darrell Brooks trial. I work, so long story short, I have just now gotten to being able to sit down and watch the news clips and the police reports, or the police chief guy coming out and talking his daily stuff and all that, reading the press releases, so on and so forth. So what we're going to do is this. I like to post clips. I like to talk about them and give my commentary. And on this, that's what I'm going to do. I'm basically going to be going over just some key points of this. If you've gone super deep into this case, this is probably going to be old information to you, just being fully transparent with you. But if you want to hear what my opinions on it are, then I'll spread those throughout. And at the very end, I'll kind of tell you really what I'm thinking is going on here. But again, also, if you follow me, then you'll know I am not a professional lawyer. I am not an investigator, a detective, or any of those things. Saying that means I'm not qualified to really do anything but give my opinion, and that's all it is my opinion. So that being said, let's go ahead and just go over the chain of events, the victims, that kind of basic information about the case. So the four victims are all in their 20s. Their names were Ethan, Madison, Zaina, and Kaylee. Now, on the night of Saturday, November 12th, Kaylee and Madison, they were best friends forever. They went out to the Corner Club bar in downtown Moscow. Now they were there from 10 p.m. to around 1:30 a.m. and at about 1:40 a.m. they were seen on video at the Grub Truck. Now this is a local food vendor. Then they used a private party for a ride home, and they got back around 1:45 a.m. Now meanwhile, Ethan and Zaina, they were dating. They went to a Sigma Chi house party that Saturday night, and they got home around 1:45 a.m. as well. Now, Ethan didn't live at the house, but he was sleeping over there with his girlfriend. Now, yes, there were two other roommates. They survived the attack. They are not considered suspects, but they also went out in Moscow Saturday night. They were home by about 1 a.m., the police said. Now, it's believed the students' lives were taken somewhere around 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. on November 13th. So, yes, the two surviving roommates were in the basement, and they slept through the ordeal. And on the morning of November 13th, the roommates called friends over to the house because they thought that one of the victims on the second floor was passed out. They weren't waking up or something, the police said. So at 11:58 a.m., a 911 call comes from one of the roommates' phones requesting help for an unconscious person. And the 911 caller's identity is not been released, but the police said that multiple people talked with the 911 dispatcher. Ultimately, the responding officers, they would find the four victims on the second and third floors. Autopsies conducted on the 17th determined all the victims were stabbed multiple times. Let's listen to what the father says. Listen to what Kaylee's father says about the whole unconscious thing.
Do you know the reason why the initial concern was that a roommate was passed out?
I know the girls reached out via texting and calling, so I can only assume that by the phones being ignored, knowing how my daughter is not going to ignore calls and texting.
Okay, now let's take a minute and just talk about each of the victims. Now, first and foremost, they were kids. They were young adults. They're starting their lives off. They've gone off to college. This is supposed to be like the most amazing time in life. And it did sound like that's how their lives were going up until this horrifying evening, this horrifying tragedy struck them. So Ethan is a triplet. He was born right before his sister and brother. They also attend the University of Idaho. His mother described him as one of the most incredible people that you'll ever know. His obituary said that he lived his best life at college. He loved the social life, intramurals, and tolerated the academics. It goes on to say that he laughed continuously. He smiled when he woke up and was still smiling when he went to bed. He was kind to all and a friend to all. Madison's father said that she was a hard worker and nice to everybody and smart and funny and beautiful. Kaylee's sister described her as someone who was going to be able to accomplish what she wanted to accomplish, that she sought out adventure, and she really lived life to her fullest. Now, Kaylee and Madison were like a long time inseparable best friends, I think since like the 6th grade. And sadly and ironically enough, they died in the same room in the same bed. Now, Zaina, her obituary said that she loves her dog Shoeshine. She enjoyed EDM music, going to concerts. It sounded like she was a really big family type person, that she enjoyed going on trips with her sister, her father. When she was little, she really liked being at her grandma and grandpa's farm, summers on the river, that kind of a thing. Now, her family actually has started a scholarship fund to continue her memory on. I think that's really awesome that they're doing that. And you can see it here up on the screen. It says that we've started a memorial endowment in Zaina's name to honor her memory and keep her legacy alive, funding scholarships each year for UI students. The Knodel family will match dollar for dollar, donations up to 10 grand. Please donate. So I think that's really amazing. And as you can see, the tweet on there from the family there. So be sure and check that out. Now, at a memorial, a pastor actually read a couple of letters from the surviving victims, the roommates who survived. So let's listen to a little snippet from that.
Reading 2 different letters, one from Dylan and one from Bethany.
Their letters read by a pastor at a service held this weekend. From Dylan Mortensen.
My life was greatly impacted to have known these 4 beautiful people.
And Bethany Funk.
Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan were truly all one of a kind. They all lit up any room they walked into and were gifts to this world.
I cannot imagine losing your friends, your loved ones in this manner, being in the house when it happened and knowing that you survived that, what took place just right above you. I can't imagine. I cannot imagine. I can't imagine being a parent and getting that phone call. Lord knows what all of them have gone through. My heart, it just breaks for each of them. Now, let's take a moment real quick and just look at the house. Okay, so as you see, there's the first floor, the second floor, the third floor. You know, and this has been this huge speculation. We're going to hear as well in a little bit when the father and the mother are interviewed. I took a clip of this out, but he was saying, you know, he throws this quip in there about he didn't have to go up the steps. He didn't have to go up the steps and it being targeted and that kind of a thing. And so, and obviously as more information comes up, and we'll find this out, because that is the huge head scratcher. How did these 2 survive? Why did they survive? And obviously thank the Lord that they did, right? You know, many things have been said about the situation in the house, and we'll talk about that here in just one second, about, you know, it being a party house and how many people have access to it and who all's been in the house and that kind of a thing. But one thing that this reminds me of, this part, is the Ted Bundy case when he went in, and also other cases like that. I can't think of the guy's name right now, where he went and took all those nurses' lives at that house. I cannot think of the name right now. However, I mean, you know, whether you want to call it spoiler alert or whatever for my thoughts, I don't think this is a Ted Bundy situation, but that part of it just reminds me of it, the randomness, the why did these people survive but these people didn't, but it kind of feeds into the overall thought of what I think is going on. So let's continue going over stuff. So, like I said, this house kind of had a reputation apparently of being a party house. Again, remember, these are like young college kids, okay, out for the first time. So let's watch a couple of clips about this. This is from Inside Edition.
These logs show cops were called to the house twice in one night in September over noise complaints. According to neighbors, there were loud gatherings most weekends involving 15 to 20 guests gathered in the backyard at the fire pit. One neighbor says she routinely had to wear earplugs to go to bed.
Okay, so again, I'll reiterate, these are college kids. This is what goes on, especially like when you have a centralized area of a bunch of young people, College Row, whatever. Now, I've never been to this area specifically. I'm thinking of Chapel Hill, where I'm from, Duke, that area, NC State. That's what we have here. And so I know these kind of areas like what they're like out here, where it's like, oh, this is where the frats are, where the sororities are, all the college housing, that kind of a thing, right? That's what I'm getting at. Now, also, the one thing that this feeds into, and again, we'll talk about some of my overall thoughts towards the end, but is how many people have been in and out of this home in the weeks prior to type thing. If there was someone who was maybe a little obsessive or something of this nature, or a neighbor, that type thing. And again, towards the end, we'll talk about another case that I actually covered recently that when I was looking at this, I was like, yeah, this just kind of feels like this, but, I digress. Let's watch actually a neighbor talk about something that happened there.
And now a neighbor who lives near the house says he heard a woman screaming the night of the murders. 30-year-old Enon Harsh, a chef, says he thinks he heard the scream at around 4 a.m., but he quickly dismissed it as noise coming from a party. I didn't think anything of it. After what happened, I've definitely had second thoughts. Maybe it was not a party sound.
Now, again, with cases like this where it's, when I say fresh, I mean it's been a month, like, right? The family and everybody's getting nervous about it being going cold, but also where there's this much public attention, it's, fresh in the way of it semi just happened. What I'm getting at is there's not a ton of information being put out there, so people start filling in the holes, that type thing. So here we hear, okay, neighbors have complained, they have to put earplugs in. This dude's saying he heard a scream, but he just thought it was whatever. But now he's retracing his thoughts back. This is the time of the time frame that something could have been happening. So that's eerie in and of itself, right? Now let's talk about the white car, because this is focusing more in on where I think if you play hot, cold, I'm like, this is hot. This is where we need to be going. So let's talk about that for a second. Let's actually start with a quick little, not a whole article, but just like the headline of it. It's from Daily Mail. I'm going to put it here on the screen. So clerk at gas station near Idaho murder house spots white sedan speeding away at 3:45 a.m. on security footage after poring over the tapes in her spare time for hours. So she was at an Idaho gas station. She spotted the thing, may have spotted a white sedan speeding away from the scene of the University of Idaho students off-campus housing. Basically, it sounds like she was working here overnight. She starts going over all these tapes, and we'll hear the parents saying some interviews that we're going to go over here in a minute about this nervousness of like, look, these videotapes and stuff like that, they have time limits on it. Like some's 24 hours, some's a month, that type thing, right? Amen, praise Jesus to this clerk for doing this, right? Because this is the kind of stuff that can lead things on. So, or, lead to things is what I mean, not lead them on. So let's look at this next clip right here. See a little clip of the actual car.
This morning, a new clue in the Idaho murder mystery. Police now investigating this surveillance image showing a white car. It was taken from an ExxonMobil station's camera around 3:45 the morning 4 University of Idaho students were murdered. The station about a mile away from their home.
So very interesting in that, but what makes it even more interesting, it's speeding away, but also what the police chief is saying about it. So let's listen to what he has to say, and then let's talk about that a little bit.
Why ask the public for additional help with this white car?
Well, through our tips, through our leads, some of the evidence that came in, we start to identify patterns. And like we said earlier, we are confident that the occupant or occupants of that vehicle have information that's critical to this investigation. We also understand that even though there's sometimes a fascination with a particular case, some people simply don't see the news and may not know that we're looking for it. So if we get the word out there, hey, maybe your neighbor has one in the garage that they don't drive very often. Maybe there's one that's just not on the registration database. Let us know. So far, we have a list of approximately 22,000 registered white Hyundai Elantras that fit into our criteria that we're sorting through. That's an awful lot of information, but it may not be all of them. So the public can help us with that.
Okay, so when he's saying this whole thing about patterns, stuff like that, that's where I'm like, huh. Now again, you know, I'm just reading into that like they have seen something that has made them say, we're very, you know, I'm reading into it, and this is just my opinion, that they are very certain that this white car has information about this. The word pattern being in there, maybe they have seen this car, you know, around that evening and all of a sudden it's speeding away. But I feel like this is onto it. Now, this is what makes me nervous at the same time, right? Is the fact of now it's out there, right? Now, obviously they need the public's help for this. You know what I'm saying? Like that kind of a thing. But is, you know, now the person driving that car hiding it? Now, another thing that he said, and says in another interview as well, is the aspect of like, look, you know, maybe your neighbor has one in the garage that doesn't get driven that often, that type thing. To me, number one, I think his name is Aaron Hernandez, the UF Gator guy who took his own life after he was convicted of taking the life of that other dude. If you kind of deep dive into that case, there was a whole thing about a car they used to do something that was like basically parked in a garage. It made me think of that. And I was just like, yeah, what if this, you know, somebody used a car that's just never used that much and is in a garage, so they're putting this out there. So this is making me feel like this is a lead. Like this is something, they've seen something in these videos, in these tapes, that's making them think we're on to something here. Now, I stumbled upon this as well, and I want to show this. Couple of reasons. Number one, to introduce this reporter. I follow him for numerous cases. I love him to death. His name's Brian Eaton. I'm probably butchering his name, but he went in, he talked to a vape shop manager. A lot of people had a lot to say about this, and I just want to play this clip up here of this because I do think it's interesting. And so let's watch this and let's talk about this for a moment.
So Kaylee and Maddie would both come in very happy, very friendly. You know, they always were just such a smile on their face. Just like pretty much you would say they're the light of the world, pretty much. You know, always happy, go lucky. They always came in just chatting. They always came with a group, like I said. They probably, I'd say 4 or 5 girls at most, all the time. They come in together. And I made a joke about it earlier. It was like, you know, hey, you know, coming together and stuff like that. You know, just, you know, it's nice to see you girls trying to stay safe. One of them more or less openly says, oh yeah, we've had a friend of ours be stalked before, so this is kind of why we all travel in a group like this. And just
was it Kaylee who said that? Do you remember?
No, it was Maddie who actually said that. So Maddie said it, and it was kind of like more mentioning, like motioning to Kaylee too, like who was right next to her. So you could tell that like they obviously all were trying to keep Kaylee safe, you know, and to be there for her as good friends. And then yeah, to know that a few weeks later, now I won't see them, you know, anymore, anything like that. So it's crazy.
How long before the murder about was that?
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
3 weeks beforehand, because I was telling them I hope they had a good Thanksgiving break and everything like that too, because I didn't know if I'd see them again. So, because with a lot of the times with the kids, with the way after the pandemic, some of the kids leave in waves. So I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to see you this weekend or not. Hey, hope you have a great, you know, Thanksgiving with your family. And that was the last I saw them.
Did they elaborate any more on the stalker comment?
They more or less kept making the comment that it always seemed to happen either by the campus or down on Main Street. And the last time the Kaylee more or less made it sound like it seemed like it was down on Main Street, and that the person was coming from like around the Corner Club area, and then like as far as I remember, it's the guy who ended up like trying to go and talk to her, and then he gave up on it and he ended up walking away. So she thought she was being stalked up to a certain point, and then looked behind her and he was no longer behind her. So
I just want to make sure that I get it right. So just tell me again exactly what you remember.
Just more or less, I made a joke about them being in a group, and they just said, yeah, you know, one of our friends and motioning to Kaylee that she'd been stalked recently, and so that had people constantly following her around. And it's not just a one-off thing, that this is apparently something that Kaylee had tons of issues with. That apparently she always had somebody who's constantly walking behind her like that. So, and it was more so at nighttime when they were out there drinking and stuff like that. Because I asked them, like, is it at school? And she's like, no, when I'm at night, going out to the bars or coming back from the bars. And again, living down that way.
Did she
there.
specifically mention the corner club?
Not the corner club, but just in that general direction and stuff like that. So the only reason I would assume the corner club is because that's the only bar that's down in that area anymore now. So we used to have two. One was CJ's and then the corner club. It's just corner club now. Then a whole block before it mingles. So.
How many times did you see Kaylee and Maddie? How many times would they come to the store?
I'd say, now that I'm trying to think back in my head, I've only saw them maybe like 6-7 times total. So I'd say probably since the start of this beginning of this year.
Okay. I'm thinking he was a little nervous. That aside, okay, so there's a couple of things here. First of all, the whole stalker theory. And this will segue. Well, no, I'm lying because we got to watch some of the things from the parents. We will revisit the stalker thing because that is something I want to talk about at the end. Again, we don't know what's what at this point or who has what information or what is authentic and what is true. So I'm just going to say that. If this is true, if these interactions are true, if all that is there, then, I mean, this could be very viable, right? Do I read into his behavior as odd? Yes. Do I think he's probably nervous just being on camera? Yes. I don't know the guy. I do know that, okay, so do I think it's odd they had this discussion with him going into the vape shop? No. From what I can tell and people who I know who go to vape shops like this, I mean, this is, they know the same people, right? It's usually like not a whole bunch of different people are working there. So you kind of build like a, oh, hey, what's up type thing. So there's that. I don't know how I feel about this interview. I'm just going to say that. I don't know how I feel about that. The whole dynamic of him talking about, oh, she said this thing about someone following them and all this and pointing in the direction of there. This is all kind of feeding into this overall thing of, yeah, there's a pattern, there's a thing. I just think that there's something to be said for that. Something to be said with someone following, someone stalking. Again, the fact that they were having these parties and it was kind of like a hangout pad, you just don't know. You don't know who could have been lingering around or even in the house. Now, one thing I like to do is also go to the Moscow Police Department site and just look at their like FAQ on there. They have like a thing of a rumor mill and stuff like that. And so I wanted to go there and just go over what they said about the stalker theory on there. I'm going to put it up on the screen and we're just going to go over this right now. Did Kaylee have a stalker? Using tips and leads, investigators have identified an incident involving Kaylee at a local business, which may have been the stalker reference she made to friends and family. In mid-October, 2 males were seen inside a local business. They parted ways, and one male appeared to follow Kaylee inside the business. And as she exited to walk toward her car, the male turned away, and it did not appear he made any contact with her. Detectives contacted both males and learned the two were attempting to meet women at the business. This was corroborated through additional investigation based on available information. Detectives believe this was an isolated incident and not an ongoing pattern of stalking. No evidence suggests the 2 males were involved in the murders. Now it says they're still continuing to look for information about this or a potential stalker or unusual occurrences should go to the tip line. So according to the police, this is not a thing or a situation. So there's that. One thing I want to do is go back to those interviews with the parents. With Kaylee's parents and look and talk about just a few clips of it, some of the information that they were giving out in it, because I just think it speaks to some of the components going on with the case.
Steve, you have made it very clear to our audience that you are supportive of law enforcement. You support the investigation. But recently, I've been watching and talking with you, and you're getting frustrated. What does that frustration come from, sir?
They put certain people between you and the officers that are making things happen, and those people are like lawyers and they don't want to say anything, and they don't have the guts to come up and be alpha and be like leaders and say, hey, we might say something that's wrong, we're going to take that hit. So the officers, they look me straight in their eyes. The lead detective looked me in his eyes. I have no doubt he's working as hard as he can, but somebody isn't communicating. There's nothing being released. It seems like they're trying to suppress the story. We want to put rewards out there. Like, don't do that.
Okay, this is one of those things where, again, my heart breaks for all these parents. I cannot imagine getting this phone call. And then to be tied up in the investigation and not getting the information, you're wanting to go knock on every door, bang every door down, find out who did this to my child, right? And obviously it can't work that way. It doesn't work that way. And I mean, I feel their frustration on that. So let's keep watching on this.
So we're working with them. We're not selling them out. We love our law support.
The FBI, everybody that's here, we just have no information as family, and it gets tough day after day after day. I mean, every day you just wake up and think today's the day. We're going to hear something, and you see these, there's a break in the case, and it'll just be something stupid.
The sixth person on the lease that was never there. Stop playing games. This is serious. These are people's lives, and this is the future of this community. There's going to be 10,000, 15,000 kids that come into this community next year, or they don't.
Now again, in this one, they are sitting here saying, hey, you know what? We respect the law enforcement. We appreciate them. Yes, it is frustrating. Now they bring up a good point of, look, this is a college town, right? 15,000 kids are going to be coming in. Can you imagine being parents who your child got accepted there to the next semester? I mean, come on, right? There's probably a lot of kids whose parents are like, you're waiting a semester to go there. I can remember when the UF, if y'all remember this, where the serial killer that killed a bunch of people at UF or whatever, and I have family that lives there. And that was going on, and I mean, it was like people were yanking their kids out of school and doing all that kind of stuff. I mean, it was crazy. Now, obviously, this is slightly different because it doesn't appear to be a serial killer, if you will, but nonetheless, that doesn't make it any better. This is still absolutely horrifying that this took place. So let's watch the next clip.
So, be serious.
I had the opportunity to speak to some of my sources, and I've been told that there were differences in the way that the victims were killed. Some were more severe than the other. And this week we heard the target attack walk back and then reverse it back to it being a target attack. What can you tell us about the targeted attack?
They have told us that it was targeted, but they told us they can't tell who. We asked specifically. And they said, we'll try to get that information to you. And they got back to us a day or so later, and they said, we're sorry, we can't give you that information. But then a day later, we saw in the news that it was not targeted. Or they think the whole house was targeted. But
okay, this whole thing, targeted, not targeted, the wounds being different, or the way that they lost their lives or whatever being a little bit different, the injuries, that part is very interesting to me. Now, obviously, at this point, if they're saying it's a targeted thing, but we don't know who, it just makes me think, okay, was one person more like brutally injured than the other person, to where it was like this one was extra personal type thing? Then you had to sit here and say, well, then why'd they go upstairs? Did they feel like, oh, somebody's home, we need to go get rid of witnesses, that type thing? I know there's tons of speculation and theories. Why didn't they go downstairs? Well, maybe they came in this way. They didn't know. Whatever, right? We don't know. But I think this is very fascinating. And again, the frustration of even the parents not knowing, like, okay, look, what is going on? Who was the target of the situation? Because if you could figure out, or if we knew that, and again, I personally think that the police know, like, they're not going to let a lot of this information out. And he even says in the press releases and stuff like that, that they're not going to let a lot of this information out to preserve the case, and they want a conviction, right? So, I mean, I get it, but at the same point, my heart aches for the parents who want answers, right? They want to find out what happened to their kid.
I'll cut to the chase.
Yeah.
Their means of death don't match.
Maddie's
they don't,
and Kaylee's cause of death, it does not match based on the autopsy report.
They don't match.
Would indicate that one of them.
He doesn't have to go up the steps. Let's stop playing games, guys. I need somebody to step up and be an alpha. Be somebody to be a leader. Don't make me do it. I don't want to do it. He doesn't have to go up the steps. Their points of damage don't match. I'm just going to say it. It wasn't leaked to me. I earned that. I paid for that funeral. I paid for that. It's my right. You ain't taking that from me.
Calm down.
If you don't want to say nothing, that's your bet. But don't say I'm leaking anything. I paid that bill. Sent my daughter to college to get an education. She came back in the box, and I can speak on that.
I mean, my God. I mean, it's just, I mean, the way he said it, I sent her off to college to get an education. She came back in a box. I mean, can you imagine? Two major things in that. The injuries or whatever not being the same. And then the way he randomly is like, he didn't have to go up the steps. So very quickly, again, I just want to look at this picture for my own mental reasoning or whatever. So the girls are on the 3rd floor. I'm just looking at the picture again. I'll put it up on the screen. Then the couple, the other two, are on the 2nd floor, and then there's the 1st floor. So obviously the very true 1st floor, they survived. Then you have boyfriend, girlfriend on the 2nd floor, and then you have the 3rd floor. Please let me know in the comment section if anyone has found out, what do we think he meant by they didn't have to go up the steps? Is he trying to say that Maddie and Kaylee, that they were an afterthought, that maybe the targets were the people on the 2nd floor? That's where I'm getting thrown off, because I do think that, whoever the target is, again, would make it, more clear in regards to a motive, like why this happened, that type thing, was this just a random thrill kill, what? So anyways, let's get back to the interview.
Fearing that evidence is disappearing, Chrissy Gonzalez shares what she thinks happened in the early morning hours of November 13th.
I think this person went in very methodical. I think he really thought it out. I think he was quick. I think it was quiet, and he got in and he got out.
It was fast, and nobody suffered and nobody felt like that kind of pain.
So they've seen the injuries. They've seen way more than we have, right? So they're saying it was fast, it was quick, it was quiet, it was methodical, that type thing. Now we know that there's obviously stabbings, this kind of a thing. So what throws me off, but then again, when you sit here and look at situations like Ted Bundy and the brutalness that he did in the homes that he went into with, remember the college campuses and stuff like that with all those girls, where, it's like, how did people sleep through this? How did he manage to go from room to room and do this? It blows my mind that this could happen, but you never know. If people have been out partying, maybe they had some drinks, they were sound asleep, they, however, whatever happened, right, were able to get in there and just kind of gain control of this household, right? I don't know. Now, one thing I want to do real quick is kind of move forward to December 16th updates. I'm actually filming this on the 16th. I'm not sure when you're going to see this, if it's going to be Saturday or Sunday, but regardless, I just want to go over kind of like the what we know, what we don't know type situation very quickly. Now, this is according to the police on their latest press release that came out today. And this is at the bottom of all of them, and I guess they update it as they cancel out information or add new stuff to it, but I just want to talk about these specific things. So at this time in the investigation, detectives do not believe the following are involved in the crime. Number one, the 2 surviving roommates, the male in the grub truck surveillance video, the private party driver who took the girls home on November 13th, the male Kaylee and Madison called numerous times during the early morning hours of November 13th, any individual at the residence when 911 was called, or the individual on the lease who moved out of the residence before the school year started and was not present at the time of the incident. Now, just real quick, the person who never ended up moving in, they're like, thank you, God, right? My God, can you imagine? There would probably be more victims. Now, it says additional information related to the investigation. Currently, no suspects in custody, no weapon has been located. On the night of the incident, officers located a dog at the residence. The dog was unharmed, turned over to animal services, and later released to a responsible party. Local businesses were contacted to determine if a fixed blade knife had been recently purchased. Detectives seized the contents of 3 dumpsters on King Road to locate possible evidence. I do think it's interesting about the knife thing, because that kind of gives me a little bit of intel of what they're thinking with the knife. And again, the person who never showed up there, because these are all, like when I'm reading through these are things that I've stumbled across today, and I was trying to decide what to put in the video and go over and talk about and discuss and hear your thoughts on, and I wanted wanted to try, I wanted to pick a couple of things like the stalker thing and go over that. But then other stuff, I was like, you know what, like some of this stuff has been crossed off the list, but I mean, of course you never know. But like the dog and the thing and like that. So I was like, you know, we're just going to cover it in this because it just muddies the water or whatever, and be able to get like a fresh slate to go forward with on the case. Now I'm also going to put up their website for those who don't know, or maybe you haven't followed the case yet. You can go to the website. This is what it looks like, and all these things you can click here. I love the way they have done this because you can just easily click one thing and look at it, and it has all the information that they have on there. It's very transparent, the stuff that they're putting out there to the cops. Now let's listen to December 16th. It's maybe a couple of minutes of the press release for today.
Returning home for winter break. Students are returning home for winter break. Does that present challenges for the investigation?
I think it's always a little bit of a challenge. We went through this, right after Thanksgiving and all that, but we have investigators all across the nation. We have investigators all across the state with the state police and the FBI. So we'll adapt to that and we'll continue to do our investigation.
What about investigators? Can they keep up this investigative pace over the holidays?
We will continue to keep up this pace. We're giving individuals time off when they need it. We're augmenting other people into those spots so that the investigation continues, but we're not going to stop investigating this.
What kind of progress has been made regarding the search for information about the white Hyundai Elantra?
We have looked at massive amounts of video footage, especially in the critical camera areas, and we've looked at the 24 hours prior to and 24 hours after of those, and now we're extending that out even further to other cameras and other time frames.
What kind of manpower does it take to really deal with all of the video coming in and the tips?
We have massive amounts of people looking at this. Multiple different groups looking at the different videos in different locations, just because we have investigators all across the nation that are reviewing these videos for us and sending us back information on that.
So as you can imagine, with winter break, holiday break, all that kind of stuff, we don't want them slowing down. Kids are leaving. How does that mess it up? I appreciate that they get on here almost every day and go over this stuff, right? They're not slowing down. They're looking into, this isn't going to slow them down, right? Now, obviously, with people dispersing for the holidays, I mean, that could, I hope that doesn't send anyone away that won't come back to town that might have something to do with it or have an answer, if that makes sense. So there's that. Now, again, they have 22,000 possible leads to look through with this car. That's insane. That's just, the state of Idaho, right? I'm just or the area, whatever. I'm not sure what their search, requirements are, whatever you call that, parameters or whatever. But regardless, when they do these, it's very intense. It's very, it's a lot, okay? So let's very quickly talk about what I personally think. So first and foremost, I don't know, right? Let's be honest. I'm not a professional. I'm just a guy with a sofa, in my opinion. I think that I believe the police when they say it was targeted. I don't think we know who it was targeted against. It's anyone's guess or whatever. I think that the police know way more than they're letting anybody know, and they have point blank said this, right? So this isn't I think, it's I know, right? The police have said this, the parents have said this, this is a fact. They know more information. They keep saying the public does not need to be afraid, but they also are look, they're not saying it this way. This is my way of saying it. They're don't be stupid, right? You always need to be, looking out, right, type thing. But the vibe they're giving off is, we're not looking for some serial killer. This is a specific thing that went after a certain person type situation. And there's clearly things that went on in that house that they're not letting anybody know so that they can preserve it. So my personal thought is this. I think there could be some validity to, and I don't even know if you want to call it a stalker theory, an interaction that has taken place at this home, whether it was through one of the parties, whether it was out that night, something of that flavor. If we were to find out that it was someone who's been to the house for a party or who lives in that vicinity, would not shock me. Now, the white car, I do feel like has that means something. Now, again, does that mean that it has to be the person, like whoever's in the white car did it. I mean, you never know. This could be multiple people who did that, right? We don't know. The person who could have had something to do with it could live there, but the white car came and, took them away. We don't know. It's anyone's guess at this point, right? But I just feel like, and do I feel like the person knows the girls? Or I shouldn't say that, the victims? I mean, maybe in a sense. In the way that, like, Ted Bundy might have known some of his people. And again, I know I keep saying that, but there's just something about this that feels like that, but not like that. You know what it also reminds me of? And I just did a video on him. Please hold while I pull my phone up and come back so I can give you the name. Okay, I'm back. Okay, if we found out that it was a situation like this, 100% I would believe it. Y'all remember this? Let me push play. Steven! You know what I'm saying? Something like that. So remember how he lived right across the street? I'm not trying to say it was the neighbor. We don't know. I'm not trying to say it was the guy at the store, the vape store. We don't know. That's the whole thing. We don't know. We have to let the investigation unfold, right? I just think that something of that nature could be very well what went on here. Look at the horrible things that Steven did to his victim, right? Girl lives across the street. Wanted to get out there and talk about, oh, she was so nice, she was so friendly. Look at what he did. Type thing. Now this is, just as horrible, different, this person took a household out, right? So I'm very curious to know what y'all think, what your theories are. Again, I'm trusting that many people at the squad have gone down major, deeper rabbit holes on this. I am going to be all in the comment section. We might very well do a live chat and read comments on this to, just go further into it. And now that I'm situated, I'm moved, I'm settled, I'm going to be following this more closely. And there's that. So let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. And again, drop hearts for not only the victims, their family members, their friends, their loved ones, Idaho, everyone. This is horrible. No one deserves to lose their life like this at all. These were 4 beautiful people with a world in front of them, and their time was just brutally stolen and ended by a monster or monsters. Now, if you want to hear other cases of me, me talk about other cases and whatnot, click the video that is popping up next.